You finally save $10,000, and 6 months later, it's gone. Hey everyone, how's it going? Did your money work for you today? Drop it in the comments. Let's jump straight into today's topic. Have you ever seen a savings goal you thought was impossible suddenly become reality weeks ahead of schedule, only to watch that money melt away faster than it took you to save it? Maybe you spent it on a car repair, a new appliance, or a vacation you convinced yourself you deserved, and suddenly you're back to zero, wondering why you even bothered. Or maybe you have $10,000 sitting in your account right now and you're not exactly sure what to do with it, so it just sits there. Here's a fact that might surprise you. What you do the moment you hit $10,000 can determine whether you actually build wealth or stay broke for the rest of your life. And most people make the wrong move at this critical moment. My name is Sterling, and I've spent years as a stock market investor and real estate owner. And now I consult people on finance and real estate. What I always witness is this: people reach real savings milestones, but then they completely ruin their financial futures with poor management. The problem is that most people treat $10,000 like they found it on the street, even though they worked for it, struggled, said no to things they needed, and finally hit that five-figure number. Their brains tell them they deserve to celebrate, that they should reward themselves, and finally buy that thing they've been putting off. Before they even realize it, that $10,000 melts away. It gets spread across a better car, new furniture, a luxury vacation, and a handful of other expenses that seem reasonable at the time. 6 months later, they're almost back to zero, wondering why building wealth feels impossible. Here is the bitter truth about $10,000. It is simultaneously a lot of money and almost meaningless. It's a lot of money because about 40% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt. So reaching this level is truly significant, and you should be proud of yourself for achieving it. But from the perspective of real financial security, it's almost insufficient. It's not enough to retire. It's not enough to buy a house in most markets. And if you lose your job, it only covers a few months of expenses. $10,000 is not wealth. It is the foundation upon which wealth is built. And what you do next determines everything. Let me tell you exactly what happens to many people who reach $10,000 and why they still end up broke. They leave the money in their checking accounts because that's where they saved it. And looking at that five-figure balance gives them a sense of security. But because the money's in the same place as their daily spending money, everything gets mixed together. So they start spending a little more comfortably than they're used to. It's not extravagant things, just a few extra meals out, some clothes they like, maybe a weekend trip they hadn't thought of before. Every purchase seems reasonable in the moment, but this slightly elevated spending habit continues for weeks and months, and over time, that $10,000 starts to dwindle. $9,250, $8,400, $7,300. They tell themselves they'll be more careful next month and save it back, but most of the time they can't because they've adapted to this higher level of spending, and pulling back is hard. Then they hit a real emergency: an $1,800 car repair, a hospital bill, or a new laptop for work. And because they've already spent nearly half of their savings, this single emergency wipes out most of what's left. Now, with their motivation completely shot, they've fallen below $4,000. All that effort they put into saving $10,000 feels like it was for nothing. And this is exactly the cycle that keeps people broke for years. Save a little, leave it easily accessible, spend it slowly through lifestyle inflation and emergencies, never build real wealth, and the cycle repeats. But people who truly build wealth do something different when they hit $10,000. And it sounds so simple you might think it's insignificant. But I promise you, this is exactly the difference between staying broke and building real financial security. The moment you hit $10,000, you split that money and put it in different places for different purposes. Not next week, not after some thought, but immediately. Because as long as that $10,000 sits in a single accessible account, it will be spent slowly. It's human nature. Your brain sees the available cash and invents reasons to use it. But if you split the money and assign a specific purpose to each piece, it becomes much harder to spend it haphazardly. Here's what you should do the day you hit $10,000. First, set aside an amount between $3,500 and $4,500 and move it to a completely separate high-yield savings account that you won't touch except for real emergencies. Not, I really want to go on vacation, but I can't cover it with my normal income situations. Real emergencies. Your car broke down, you lost your job, or you had a health problem. This is your emergency fund. This money needs to be physically separated from your normal spending money, because most people keep their emergency fund in the same account as their regular money and then wonder why they're constantly dipping into it for non-emergencies. So, put the money somewhere else, somewhere that takes a day or two to transfer back to your checking account. In other words, create real friction between you and your money, because the psychological effect of this separation is very powerful. When you have $10,000 in your checking account, your brain thinks you have $10,000 ready to spend. But when you have $2,000 in your checking account and $4,000 in a separate emergency fund, you've decided not to touch, your brain adapts to living on that $2,000. You make different decisions, you're more careful, and you think twice before spending because you can't just haphazardly touch your savings. Now, here's where most people mess up even when they create a separate emergency fund. They put all $10,000 into that emergency fund and feel incredibly financially responsible for doing so. This isn't terrible, but it's also not optimal because money sitting in a savings account earning 1 or 2% interest barely keeps up with inflation. You're safe, but you aren't building wealth. You're protecting what you have, but you aren't growing it. That is exactly why you only put between $3,500 and $4,500 into the emergency fund when you first hit $10,000, because this amount is enough to cover most single emergencies without completely wiping you out. But it's not so much that you're parking all your money in a low-growth account. Whatever is left from that $10,000 after your emergency fund, likely between $5,500 and $6,500, should start working for you and generating compound returns over time. This is where the second critical move comes in. After securing your emergency fund, you take the rest and put it into a Roth IRA, or a taxable investment account, invested in broad market index funds. Not individual stocks you chose because you read something online. Not crypto because a friend said it's going to the moon. Just boring, simple, broad market index funds that track the whole stock market. Then you leave it alone and let it grow for years, ideally decades. What most people don't understand about investing until they actually do it is this. Investing isn't about getting rich quick or picking the next big winner. Investing is about putting money somewhere where it can grow faster than inflation while you go on with your life. When you invest $5,500 in index funds that average a 7.5% annual return, you don't wake up a millionaire the next month. But in 5 years, that $5,500 can grow to about $7,900. In 10 years, it can reach about $11,300. In 20 years, it could be $23,500 or more. And almost nothing needs to be done for this to happen, other than letting compound growth work. But this is exactly where the part that separates serious wealth builders from those who stay broke comes in. What you do after you split that first $10,000 is at least as important, because saving $10,000 once and then stopping is basically meaningless for long-term wealth building. People who are truly financially secure are those who use that $10,000 milestone as the starting point for a system that automatically continues to build wealth. That's why, after setting up your emergency fund and investing the rest, you set up automatic transfers to keep growing both pools. Maybe $175 goes automatically to the emergency fund every paycheck until you reach 6 months of expenses, and another $225 is automatically transferred to your investment account. The exact numbers change based on your income and expenses, but the principle is the same. You don't just save $10,000 and call it a day. You use that $10,000 as the foundation of a wealth-building system that works automatically whether you're motivated or not, because motivation is not reliable. Motivation gets you to $10,000, but when life gets hard, or you see something you really want to buy, or all your friends are going on expensive trips and you feel left out, motivation disappears. Motivation is what gets you started, but systems are what keep you going when motivation is gone. And the system is simple. Money comes into your checking account. A portion is automatically transferred to the emergency fund, a portion goes automatically to the investment account, and you live your life with the rest. Now, let's talk about the temptation that misleads almost everyone who hits $10,000 for the first time. The urge to use it as a down payment for something big. Maybe you wanted to buy a house and you think $10,000 can be your down payment, or you want a better car and you think putting $10,000 down will get you a great deal, or you want to start a business and $10,000 seems like enough to start. Let's be clear, none of these are automatically bad ideas, but when you hit $10,000 for the first time in your life, it's probably the wrong move. Because using all your $10,000 as a down payment for a house or car means taking your savings back to zero. You tie yourself to monthly payments that will likely last for years, you have no financial cushion. And if something goes wrong, if you lose your job and can't make the mortgage payment, or your car breaks down and you can't afford both the installment and the repair, you've put yourself in serious financial stress by going too quickly from saving $10,000 to spending it all on a down payment. People who truly build wealth take a different path. After reaching $10,000, they keep saving. They reach 20,000, then 30,000, then 50,000. And when they make a big purchase like a house, they put 20% down, they still have a solid emergency fund. They don't struggle to meet monthly payments, and they buy from a position of strength rather than scraping money together just to qualify for a loan. I know this sounds slow and boring, and you probably want to have your house, your car, or whatever you've dreamed of right away. But what you need to understand is this. The difference between people who build wealth and those who stay broke is almost entirely about patience and delayed gratification. Broke people see $10,000 and think about what they can buy with it right now. Rich people see $10,000 and think about what it can turn into if they are patient. And this difference in perspective determines everything. Let's talk about taxes for a moment, because this is exactly where many people make expensive mistakes without even realizing it. Where you put that $5,500 to $6,500 from your first $10,000 is extremely important for tax purposes. If you just open a normal brokerage account and start investing, you'll pay taxes on all dividends and capital gains. It's not the end of the world, but it's not the most efficient option. That's why I mentioned a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA allows you to invest money that has already been taxed, and then everything that money earns grows completely tax-free forever. You invest $5,500 today. In 20 years, it can reach about $23,500, and you don't pay a single dollar in taxes on those gains. Compare that to a normal brokerage account, where you might pay 15 or 20% tax on those same gains. A Roth IRA alone can save you tens of thousands of dollars in taxes over your lifetime simply because you made the right choice about where to put your money when you first hit $10,000. Annual contribution limits for a Roth IRA are currently around $7,000. So when you hit $10,000, you can put a significant amount into your Roth IRA and still have enough money left for your emergency fund. This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking that wealthy people do automatically, but most people never learn because no one teaches it. When you manage your first $10,000 correctly, something else happens. You begin to understand the difference between saving and investing, and why both are important for different reasons. Because an emergency fund in a high-yield savings account is saving. It's safe, it's easy to access, and it doesn't grow much. Money in index funds, however, is investing. It fluctuates, it might go down in the short term, but in the long term, it's expected to grow significantly faster than inflation. Most people think these are the same thing or only do one or the other, but real wealth builders know that both are necessary. Saving is needed for short-term security and emergencies, and investing is needed for long-term wealth building and retirement. When you reach $10,000 and split it between an emergency fund and investments, you're actually triggering both systems at once. You protect yourself against near-term threats while simultaneously building your future financial freedom. Now, let's address the biggest psychological hurdle that prevents people from doing all this: the fear of putting their money somewhere they can't easily access. They worked hard to save that $10,000, and the idea of putting $5,500 into an investment account where they can't withdraw it whenever they want feels scary. What if they need it? What if an emergency happens? What if they regret it later? This fear keeps people broke because they never transition from just holding cash to actually investing and building wealth. But here's the reality. If you've properly built an emergency fund between $3,500 and $4,500, you can handle most emergencies without touching your investments. And if you experience a truly massive crisis where your emergency fund isn't enough, yes, you can withdraw money from investment accounts. Depending on the type of account, you might pay some taxes or penalties. But if you really need it, you can still access that money. The point isn't that the money is locked away forever and you can never touch it. The point is to put it somewhere that requires a few extra steps to access, protecting yourself from impulsive purchases or lifestyle inflation. What I see in people who build serious wealth is this. The moment they hit $10,000, they make it harder to spend that money haphazardly. They set up their accounts, automate the transfers, and then basically forget about it and focus on making more money and living their lives while the system runs in the background. Those who stay broke are the ones who keep everything easily accessible and then wonder why it's constantly disappearing. Now comes the part where I have to be brutally honest with you, my friends. Most people reading this won't actually do any of the things I just described. They'll read it, think it makes sense, maybe even feel motivated for a day or two, and then they'll do what they've always done. They'll hit $10,000, leave the money in a checking account, and slowly consume it through a combination of lifestyle inflation and unexpected expenses. They'll end up back where they started, wondering why they can't get ahead financially despite working hard and making decent money. But if you are one of the rare people who actually takes action, someone who splits that $10,000 as soon as you hit it, sets up the emergency fund and investments, automates the transfers to keep both growing, and resists the temptation to spend it all on a down payment before you're truly ready, your entire financial future just changed. Because you're not just $10,000 richer. You've laid the foundation for a wealth-building system that will continue to grow for the rest of your life. $10,000 is the greatest financial achievement of your life so far, and at the same time, it is almost insignificant compared to where you can go from here. What you do with it determines which of these two perspectives will be your reality. So manage it right, split it, invest it, protect it, and build upon it. 10 years from now, you'll look back at this moment and say, this was the turning point where I stopped being broke and started building real wealth. Or you'll mismanage it, spend it, keep it all in a checking account, use it as a down payment before you're ready. And 10 years from now, you'll still be trying to save your first $10,000, wondering why it's so hard. The choice is entirely yours, and whether you realize it or not, you are making that choice right now. Remember, money loves patience. Let your money work for you, not the other way around. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like because every like is an investment for me. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.